On this episode, we're going to talk about the 5 main movement patterns and exercises to help strengthen them. Hey guys, my name's Chris Schaefer, here to talk about the 5 main exercise movements and a couple exercises to help train them. So the first one we're going to talk about today is the squat. So the squat looks like this. We're all pretty familiar with the squat, especially in the powerlifting world or the weightlifting world. For this one, guys, this is a pretty basic movement. So the squat starts off as a basic human movement. Your feet should be about shoulder width. Okay, toes are slightly pointed out. You want those knees to track or drive over the toes. When we begin the squat, we're going to start with the hips slightly back, and then we're going to think about pulling ourselves down with the hamstrings to as low as we can go, and then driving up, squeezing the butt using the hips. Okay, a couple exercises to help with this one. Obviously, your barbell movements, the back squat with the barbell on the back, your front squat with the barbell racked in the front. You can even go goblet squats with kettlebells, dumbbells, air squats. You can go with pistols, single leg squats for stability. There's a bunch of different variations of it, but pretty much it's going to be all around that squat and just different loading patterns. Second one we're going to talk about today is the hinge, and that looks like this. Okay, this one is very similar, or is the deadlift. So you think about the deadlift, driving up, driving through. This one's going to target more of the hamstrings, the hips, the posterior chain. Okay, couple things here. You want to start with the hips, about hip width. Toes a little bit more forward in this one than the squat. We want to keep those knees in line with the toes as well. We're going to start with the hips are going to shoot straight back, keeping a nice neutral spine, hinging back. You should feel those hamstrings and glutes tighten. As you come down, you're going to go as low as you can, and then keeping a neutral spine. In the deadlift, as an example, you may need a little bit of a knee bend, but you always want to keep a neutral spine, hips loaded. The difference on this and bending over are obviously where my hips go. So if you watch my hips, when I hinge, they go back, and I'm back on my heels. My toes can come up off the ground, but I'm still stable. In just a bending over, if I go to bend over, now I'm more toe, midfoot heavy. If I have to lean back, now I go back into that hinge position. This is going to put more stress on my lower back, where I want that tension on the legs and the hips, the more stronger muscles, not my lower back if I'm bending over. Movements to train this, the deadlift, you can go barbell, kettlebell, dumbbells even. You can also go single leg stuff, a little bit more of a straighter knee, but you can go more single leg stuff for stability. Even kind of training a couple different muscles here. Talk about the bent over row, you're still in that hinge position. A couple of variations like that. Third one we're going to talk about today is the pressing. So this one may be out front, horizontal, or overhead, vertical. Okay, this one's mainly, in the horizontal plane, is mainly going to use the chest, okay, the arms, the back as kind of the antagonist muscle there. On this one, guys, very important on this one, is a lot of times I see people doing push-ups and they have those elbows flared out, or bench press. Really want to think about, like, if you're going to push someone away, where your elbows be tight to the body. That creates that torque on the elbows and shoulders, keeps your hands tight. So you wouldn't want to perform a push-up like this. You want to keep those elbows back, shoulders back, and drive it away just like you would push somebody away. Ways to train this, obviously the push-up, bench press, dumbbell pressing. You can even have different variations of the push-up, incline, decline, staggered, where your hands are a little different. On the overhead kind of pressing, this one, guys, you want to think about staying nice and tight, same thing, straight up overhead. Try to keep those ribs from flaring up. You want to keep the ribs down, body straight, pressing right overhead. This one's going to be more shoulders, some back in there, some upper body. This one to train, you can always go pressing, barbell, dumbbell. And if you have trouble in this position, if you are very tight in the lats and you notice yourself leaning back to press, maybe with a barbell, the way you can train this and kind of focus on keeping your ribs down more, go with some dumbbells to the side, and that will keep you from having to lean back and get out of the way, and maybe a little bit easier on the back. So that's the pressing. Opposite of that one, number 4, we have pulling. So we have our horizontal pulling, and then we have our vertical pulling, okay? These ones are the exact opposite. So if your chest is the main movement on this one, your back is going to be the main movement on the opposite movement. So we think about rowing. You're here, you're pulling into the body. That's going to be the back, the lats pulling into you. Both on the vertical and horizontal, it's the same thing. A couple of tips on this one, guys. Same thing, elbows stay tight. It's the same movement, just the opposite direction. Big thing you see on pull-ups. A lot of times you'll see people reach out like this and they have that broken shoulder in the front. You want to focus on keeping that shoulder back, locked in position, and not trying to use the shoulder in a pull-up, but more of the back. So in a pull-up, think about keeping those elbows back, squeezing the backs and shoulders together. On the horizontal pull, whether you're going with a row, keeping those elbows in tight, the shoulder back. What you don't want to do, have that shoulder fall forward. Pull them back, roll those shoulders back, and focus on squeezing the shoulder blades. Movements on this one, you can go with the bent over row, with the barbell, dumbbells. You can go single leg to kind of train the stability. For the overhead or the vertical pull, pull-ups are great. Lat pull-downs are great too. I wouldn't spend too much time behind, especially if you already have shoulder issues. But that is another variation as well. The behind the neck, either pull or the press. I didn't mention that one, to help train kind of those muscles in the back. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time, especially heavy, if you already have shoulder issues. Fifth and final movement we're going to talk about, movement pattern, is rotation, or some call anti-rotation. So that's rotating the body, but it's not only the core, which is most of the time we think about. You can also have shoulder rotation, hip rotation. Okay, a bunch of different parts of your body has rotation in and out, or abduction and adduction. So on these, you can train a bunch of different joints. If you were talking about the core, we can go with things like slam ball, side slams, where we're getting that rotation, like you're hitting a baseball. Okay, you should really feel this center part here, those obliques and the abs working on that kind of stuff there. You want to make sure on that stuff, especially when you're going from the ground, you don't want to bend over. Okay, you want to have a nice athletic stance, rotate and drive. Another exercise you can do shoulder-wise, you can do clubs, maybe a dumbbell, just small light rotations. It's going to work those smaller muscles in the shoulders. You don't want to go super heavy with these because your rotator cuff is not a huge muscle, it's a stabilizer. So you want to keep it nice and light, maybe just a band, maybe holding it. For your hips, you can talk about the adduction and abduction, either the pushing in or pulling out. But this is really good, and this is going to help train those squats where your knees are driving out. Okay. You can also do a bunch of stuff with the rotation that's going to help on that hip, and this is great for sports like baseball where you're rotating a lot, or golf where you're driving through and you want a lot of hip torque and hip rotation. If these are weak and it's starting to compensate, it's going to compensate in the back. So a lot of people tend to get tight hips and then they're twisting in the back and then they pull a muscle in their back because their hips are not driving it. It's their back that's rotating. So that's a great one to train as an athlete. All 5 of them, though, you should be training. If you guys have any questions or comments, want to see any other videos on topics, leave a comment below. Thanks, guys.